your brain is hurting. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Pues es que
Su
me duele el
cerebro le
cerebro.
duele. ¿Me lo podría explicar?
Es un dolor que me viene aquí, se me corre para acá arriba y luego me
It's a
duerme toda la
pain that I
cabeza.
have right here, and it runs all through the front, and then it hurts my entire head.
And how long have you had this pain?
¿Y cuánto tiempo ha tenido este dolor?
Me va y me viene como por 2 semanas, pero
It
desde anoche no
comes
se me
and
quita.
goes over the last 2 weeks, but since last night it has not gone away.
Okay, and are you taking any medication currently?
¿Actualmente está tomando algún medicamento?
Mi vecina me dio unas pastillas que le dieron aquí para dolor.
Sorry. My neighbor gave me some pills that I was given for the pain, that she told me to take for the pain.
Are these prescription medications or just over the counter?
¿Esto es medicamento que alguien le recetó o lo puede comprar a venta libre?
Se lo dieron aquí para el mismo dolor del cerebro.
They gave it to her here for the same pain in her brain.
So it's a prescription medication.
Entonces es una medicina recetada.
Sí.
Yes.
Okay, generally I would recommend that unless the prescription was specifically given to you, you don't take someone else's medication.
Yo recomendaría que a menos de que la receta se le fue dada específicamente a usted, no debería de tomar la medicina recetada para otras personas.
Es que como era tan fuerte el dolor, no se me
Well,
quitó
the
con
thing is the
Tylenol.
pain is just so strong it wouldn't go away with just Tylenol.
Okay, well it's a good thing you came in today then. We're going to talk a little more about maybe some tests we can run to see what's going on since this has been a problem that you've had for a while.
Pues qué bueno que vino el día de hoy. Vamos a ver si podemos hacer algunos estudios para tratar de averiguar qué está pasando con usted, ya que obviamente esto ha sido un problema que ha tenido ya por un rato.
Ah, ok. Muchas gracias, doctora.
I'll
Thank
be
you very
right
much.
back in 5 minutes.
Okay. Regresa en 5 minutos.
Gracias.
So we had a little mock interpretation session there. Would you ladies like to comment a little bit about what just happened and a lot of common mistakes people make who are not trained interpreters?
I think a lot of people don't speak, in the first person like they should. One of the things that I was taught when I was first interpreting was, I'm not necessarily a person in the room, I'm a voice. And I say exactly what the person I'm interpreting for says. Obviously there's no such thing as word for word translation or interpreting, sorry. A lot of times you end up having to maybe, switch the sentence around, but you can pretty much say what the provider is saying, and you don't have to say she said, he said, ella dijo, él dijo. That is definitely something to leave out when you are doing interpretation.
And I just wanted to add in there, you guys probably noticed that I used the fact that I was taking somebody else's prescription medication, and that's something that we commonly see. It's something cultural because they don't usually have a primary care physician. If they do, they're so busy working that they wait till the last minute. And the reason why I added it in there was because if it would have been a family member, they probably would have just said, oh, she took some pain medication, and would have never mentioned the fact that it was a prescription pain medication from somebody else in fear that the patient will get in trouble with the doctor.
Okay, great. So avoid the he said, she said.
Right.
Great.
Another advice that I would give if you're interpreting, you gotta be patient. You got to be patient, and you do have to learn how to kind of reel back in your patients. A lot of times people will, start going off about stuff that really have nothing to do with the problem at hand, the symptoms at hand, and, the doctors do want to get right to, helping you with the reason that you came in today. And, sometimes not in a rude manner, and not that you are trying to be mean to people, but not that you cut them off, but, you do have to kind of, it becomes your job as an interpreter to kind of, handle the flow of the conversation. And you end up having to kind of, shortcut people sometimes in order to, get to accomplish what you are trying to accomplish with the provider and the patient.
And that's where our role as a clarifier would come into use.
Sorry. getting a page.
So I will ask you just a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. What do you do as an interpreter if you don't know a word? Or if perhaps you just don't understand what the doctor is explaining for whatever reason?
I would, if I don't understand what the term is or what the word is, I would ask the physician or the doctor to please give him an example. So I will say, I don't know what you're trying to tell them. Can you please go more into detail, or what is it that you're trying to tell the patient? Because if I don't understand as an interpreter, most likely the patient is not going to understand as a patient who's being given that information.
My rule of thumb has always been, and this is just a personal thing, but never, ever assume anything. Don't ever just, think, well, I'll just tell them this and hope it's the right thing.
Or make up
Don't do it. Or make up something. Yeah, if you don't know, speak up that you don't know. I mean, I think, once you do get experience, most of the time you're going to be just fine. But every once in a while you do stumble across something that you've never heard before. And it's, I believe, the right thing to do is to stop and, look at the provider and say, I don't know what that is. And, definitely don't make up stuff and don't assume anything. Don't assume that they know, that they'll understand. If, more than likely, if you don't understand it, the patient is not going to understand it.
And do you generally find if you tell the provider, I don't understand this term, then they can explain it and then you can overcome that obstacle?
Oh, most definitely. And then you'll come into the office, research, educate yourself on what it is, so that next time you do know how to interpret properly.
I've never had a provider, be upset with me or, mad that I don't know something. I've never, more often than not, they're always more than willing to explain. And because, like I said, if the interpreter doesn't know what that means, the patient's not going to know what it means. And the whole purpose is for the patient to understand what the doctor is saying.
My last question for you. What do you recommend to help educate and prepare healthcare professionals to work with Hispanic populations?
Cultural comprehension, cultural education. Most importantly, second of all, be patient. Using an interpreter does add additional time that you have to be in the patient's room explaining what is going on, because you have to speak to them. You have to wait until the interpreter does do their job and interprets whatever you're trying to bring across, and just be as caring to them as you would with anybody else. Some providers go in there speaking in a louder or higher pitched voice, assuming that would help bring the message across. It's the same as if they were English speaking. So.
Yeah, I would agree with her, and be patient, and because you're gonna they do tend to take longer. It's two people speaking. Be sensitive to the cultural needs, differences, and sometimes you do end up having to advocate for the patient as well. Sometimes you kind of pick up on something that's going on in the room, and you end up telling the nurse or the doctor outside of the room, like, hey, listen, I think this is going on because, in Hispanic cultures, this tends to happen, and sometimes the provider and the nurses end up becoming more understanding of why the family's reacting a certain way or why the patient's reacting a certain way, because they have more knowledge about the cultural background,
Do you have any examples